5 drunk bikers circled a young black college student at a remote gas station, hurling slurs and threats. What they didn't know was that he'd trained for moments just like this. The sun was hanging low over Yuma, Arizona, pouring heavy heat across the asphalt like syrup. It was late afternoon, but the temperature still clung to triple digits. Elijah McCall could feel it pulsing through the steering wheel of his 2010 Honda Accord as he pulled off the highway. His tank was almost empty, and he'd been nursing the last quarter-gallon for miles. The next gas station sign might as well have been a lifeline. He turned into a worn-down Shell station, sitting alone off the I-8. No other businesses nearby. Just that crooked sign, a single island with 4 pumps, and a small convenience store with a flickering "open" sign. The place looked like it hadn't been updated since the early 90s. But it was open, and that was all Elijah needed. He parked by pump number 2, cut the engine, and stepped out. Sweat stuck to the back of his neck the moment he stood up. His boots hit the pavement with a dull thud. Still in his Marine-issued training gear, black compression tee, khaki shorts, and a worn-out cap turned backward, he reached for his wallet, swiped his card, and started filling the tank. There was nothing particularly special about Elijah, not at first glance. A lean 6'1", steady brown eyes, quiet presence. But those who paid attention could see the way he moved, controlled, aware. The way he scanned a space without being obvious. His instructors used to say, "You carry the quiet that makes noise when it matters." As the gas flowed, he looked toward the glass storefront. The inside was mostly empty. A woman in her 50s behind the counter, probably the owner. She gave a quick glance, then went back to scrolling on her phone. A young white guy with earbuds stood by the fridge, holding a Gatorade, too focused on his screen to notice anything else. Elijah wasn't thinking about them. He was just tired. He'd been up since 0500, did his reserve drills that morning, then spent the last 3 hours driving back to Tempe. All he wanted was a cold drink and maybe something salty to hold him over until dinner. He finished pumping, walked inside, and headed straight for the coolers. Grabbed a bottle of water, a protein bar, and a bag of trail mix. No one said anything. The woman behind the counter didn't smile. The guy by the fridge had vanished. At the register, the clerk looked at him like she wasn't sure whether to make eye contact or not. Elijah gave her a polite, "Afternoon." She mumbled something and took his cash. No small talk. He didn't mind. Not really. He'd dealt with that kind of energy before. More times than he could count. He kept his voice low, his tone steady. He grabbed his change, said thank you, and walked out. Back at his car, he leaned on the driver's side door, cracked open the water, and took a long sip. The heat was still baking the lot, but he wasn't rushing. The hum of cicadas, the dry air, the faint sound of a semi-truck downshifting on the highway, all of it felt routine. Predictable, but then he heard it. The low, choppy rumble of motorcycle engines. 3, no, them, coming up fast from the westbound side. Elijah turned just slightly, not alarmed, just tracking the noise. 5 bikes rolled into the lot like they owned it. Loud pipes, faded denim, heavy boots. They parked diagonally across 2 pumps without cutting the engines right away. Their laughter carried louder than the motors. Elijah stayed still, eyes shaded by his cap, sipping his water. One of the bikers, tall, red beard, mirrored sunglasses, looked his way for a second too long, then nudged the guy beside him. Something about the shift in their energy wasn't right, but Elijah had been in real danger before. And this just looked loud. The gas station lot, which had been nearly empty minutes ago, suddenly felt cramped. The bikers hadn't parked so much as claimed the space. 5 men, each rough in their own way. Sun-scorched skin, beer bellies, chain wallets, boots scuffed by more bars than job sites. One wore a sleeveless vest with a faded Confederate patch. Another had a skull ring on each hand. Their bikes weren't polished. They were tools, not toys. Dirt-caked, heavy, loud. They didn't speak to the clerk when they walked in. They didn't even glance her way. One of them kicked the door open like he owned the joint. The door slammed against the wall. She flinched but said nothing. Elijah leaned against his car. Calm. He was used to situations where people tried to provoke him. You don't get through 4 years in the Corps, 2 rotations in Okinawa, and still let fools like this rattle you. He'd been in rooms where people whispered worse behind his back, but they usually weren't dumb enough to say it out loud. Still, he knew body language. And the guy with the red beard, he was looking for something. A reason. Anything. Elijah didn't give him one. He took another sip of water, opened his trail mix, and tossed a handful in his mouth like nothing was happening. The men came back out of the store laughing, each with tall boys in hand, one of them cracking his open before he even stepped off the threshold. They saw Elijah again. Redbeard locked eyes this time. No more glancing. "You lost or what?" he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Elijah didn't answer. He looked toward the highway, like he was calculating how long it would take to get back on the road. Probably about 30 seconds. "I said, you lost." Redbeard stepped off the curb, slow, deliberate. A few of the others chuckled behind him. Elijah replied, still calm. "Just filling up. On my way back to school." Another one chimed in, the short, stocky one with crooked teeth. "School? That right? What kind of school lets in people like you?" That line hung in the air. Not clever. Not even subtle. Just bare. Elijah looked down at his water bottle. Took another sip. His silence didn't come from fear. It came from control. He'd seen Marines lose their tempers and ruin their careers. He wasn't about to join them, but the bikers mistook it for weakness. Redbeard laughed. "What, cat got your tongue? You one of them quiet types. That it?" Elijah finally looked up. "Just trying to get back to Tempe." Redbeard squinted. "Tempe, huh? Bet you're one of those campus boys, huh? Whole world's just opening up for you." The others started walking toward Elijah now. Not fast, not charging, but close enough to make a statement. A couple in a pickup truck across the lot watched from their front seat. Windows rolled up. Frozen. The clerk inside stopped pretending to work and just stared. No one moved. No one said a word. The fifth biker, youngest of the bunch, maybe early 30s, hung back. Didn't look as comfortable as the others. His eyes flicked between Elijah and the man in the front. Redbeard pointed at the Marine Corps tattoo on Elijah's forearm. "That real? Or you just get that done to impress your TikTok fans?" Elijah answered without blinking. "Did my time. Still do." That changed something. For a second, a flicker of confusion passed over Redbeard's face. But ego is a hard drug, and these men were high on their own noise. Stocky guy smirked. "Marine, huh? You think that makes you special?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." They were close now. Too close. Elijah stood upright, set his water bottle down on the car hood, and said, "Look, I don't want trouble. You've had your fun. I'd like to be on my way." "Or what?" Redbeard grinned. Elijah met his stare. Quiet. Level. "Or you're gonna find out I'm not the one." But Redbeard wasn't used to being told no, and some men need to learn the hard way. The heat clung to every surface, but Elijah barely felt it now. His focus had narrowed. Redbeard was 2 steps from him. The others fanned out in a loose half-circle, hands casually near belts, just enough to threaten without making it obvious. The clerk inside was on the phone. Elijah could see her through the glass. Not dialing, just holding it. Probably not even talking, just clutching it like a lifeline. The couple in the truck across the lot? Still pretending they didn't see a thing. Windows up, eyes forward, engine running. If things went south, they'd be gone before the first punch landed. Elijah had trained for worse. He remembered a drill in Camp Pendleton, where his instructor barked, "You'll be outnumbered. You'll be targeted. And if your mouth writes a check your hands can't cash, you're going home with more than bruises." But here, it wasn't about bruises. It was about respect. Or the lack of it. The kind that cuts before it ever turns physical. Redbeard's voice was lower now, more controlled. "You think just 'cause you got that little Marine tattoo, we're supposed to back down?" "No," Elijah said. "I think you should back down because I gave you a chance to." The youngest biker. guy with the chain hanging from his jeans, looked unsure. He kept glancing at Elijah's stance, the way his weight was shifted slightly forward, hands relaxed, elbows loose. Not like someone scared, like someone ready. Red Beard didn't notice, or didn't care. He stepped closer, less than a foot now, and grinned. "Let me guess. Got that black belt too, huh?" Elijah didn't answer. Silence was sharper than any comeback. The tension snapped with a simple act. Red Beard reached out. Slow, mocking, and slapped Elijah's baseball cap off his head. It landed on the hot pavement with a soft flap. That was the moment. Elijah didn't move. Not yet. But something behind his eyes flickered. Just for a second. Like a quiet switch flipped. Red Beard laughed. "Ain't so tough without your hat, huh?" One of the others joined in. "He ain't gonna do nothing, man. Just another soft college boy playing soldier." Elijah bent down slowly, picked up his cap, and dusted it off. Then he stood upright again. Calm. Steady. "You get one," he said, voice firm. That was it. The youngest biker stepped back a bit, now clearly nervous. "Rick, man, maybe we chill." But Red Beard... Rick was too far gone. He shoved Elijah lightly in the shoulder. "What you gonna do, boy?" "Huh?" That word. That tone. The way it hit the air. Disgusting and casual. Like he'd done it before, like it worked before. Elijah looked him in the eye. "I'm not your boy." Rick grinned wider. "Oh, you gonna get all serious now? Is this where you get tough?" The guy to his left, stocky with the crooked grin, started circling behind Elijah, trying to flank him. Elijah's eyes tracked him without turning his head. He could feel where each man was, like mapping a room in your sleep. He'd been in barracks where the tension was thicker than this. He'd stared down live combat. But this moment was different. This wasn't a battlefield. It was a gas station in broad daylight, and yet somehow no one, not even the ones who could speak up, wanted to step in. He caught the clerk's eyes through the glass. She looked away. But Elijah knew the line was coming, and once it was crossed, there'd be no turning back. Elijah's hands were still down. He hadn't clenched his fists. He hadn't squared up. But inside, his body was already calculating. Distance, balance, leverage. Training didn't disappear just because you weren't in uniform. Rick didn't back off. If anything, the slight flinch from his youngest friend only egged him on. "You think you're better than us, huh?" Rick muttered. He stepped forward again, chest puffed. His breath reeked. Cheap beer, old cigarettes, and something sour. "Big man with a fancy education? Military, huh? That's what you're hiding behind?" Elijah's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak, didn't move. Then Rick shoved him. Not a joke this time. Not a playful push. 2 full hands to the chest, hard enough to send the average guy stumbling. Elijah didn't budge. Rick blinked. For a second, just 1 second, the mask cracked. Surprise flickered across his face. And that was enough. Elijah didn't strike first. That mattered to him. But when Rick's hand came back up, whether for another shove or worse, Elijah moved. Fast. He stepped in, hooked Rick's arm, and twisted it in one smooth motion. Rick's balance broke instantly, and Elijah pivoted behind him, slipping one arm around his neck and locking the other at the elbow. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't dramatic. It was clinical. Rick's feet scrambled under him, but Elijah had him controlled before the others even reacted. The stocky guy lunged. Elijah dropped Rick to the ground, stepped sideways, and used the biker's own momentum against him. A quick shoulder turn, a sweep of the leg, and the second man hit the pavement hard, ribs smacking the concrete. The third one paused, fist raised, eyes unsure. Elijah looked at him, not angry, not shaking, just calm. That calm scared him more than anything else. "You sure?" Elijah asked. That was it. The man lowered his hand. "Back up," Elijah said, voice even. "All of you, right now." Rick was still on the ground, gasping, red-faced and furious, trying to yell but too winded to speak clearly. The guy Elijah had dropped second was groaning, rolling over onto his side, clutching his hip. The silence that followed was louder than anything they'd said before. The youngest biker took a step back. We didn't mean... it was just... Elijah pointed toward the edge of the lot. Go, before you make this worse. The four men helped Rick up, but it wasn't with pride. It was with hesitation. Their eyes no longer held arrogance. They didn't speak. They just shuffled back toward their bikes, Rick limping, leaning on the shoulder of the guy he used to mock for being soft. The couple in the truck? Still watching, eyes wide, not moving. The clerk inside now had her phone up to her ear. Maybe she was calling the cops now, maybe just pretending again. Elijah stepped back to his car, heart steady. His body was humming with adrenaline, but his mind was sharp. He opened the door, set his water on the roof, and leaned against the frame, waiting, breathing. He wasn't running. He hadn't done anything wrong. The bikers sat on their bikes for a minute, revving engines without purpose. It was all theater now. Their energy had shifted from dominance to defense. Rick shouted something Elijah couldn't quite make out. It didn't matter. The bite was gone. Whatever lesson Rick thought he was teaching had flipped on him completely. But just as they started to pull away, red and blue lights appeared at the end of the road. Things weren't over yet. The sound of sirens was faint at first, almost drowned out by the bikers' idling engines. But as the flashing lights came into view, everything slowed. The bikers looked at each other like a crew suddenly realizing they weren't on home turf anymore. The patrol SUV rolled into the lot, dust kicking off its tires, and stopped right near the pumps. The engine cut. A door opened. Out stepped a sheriff's deputy, hand resting near his sidearm, eyes scanning the scene with the kind of calm that says, "I've seen worse, but I'm not here to play dumb." He was lean, older, maybe mid-50s, with a stiff walk that said he'd been wearing that belt a long time. He looked first at Elijah, standing beside his car, arms crossed, then at the bikers, two still on their bikes, one sitting on the curb holding his ribs, Rick trying to stay upright, and the youngest standing awkwardly behind them. "Everybody freeze right where you are," the deputy said firmly, voice cutting through the still heat. Nobody moved. The clerk inside the store stepped out timidly. "I called. I wasn't sure if I should, but—" "Good thing you did," the deputy replied. "Ma'am, stay back for now." Rick, still limping, suddenly found his voice. "He attacked us! We were just minding our business and this guy jumped us!" The deputy didn't respond right away. He looked at Elijah again, this time longer. Then he turned back to Rick. "All 5 of you were minding your business, sir, and 2 of you ended up on the ground." "He ambushed us, man!" Another biker added. "Just snapped!" "I have security cameras," the clerk said quickly. "Outside and inside. They saw everything." Rick's face twitched. He didn't like that. Elijah stepped forward. Calm, not aggressive. "They followed me out, surrounded me, shoved me. I warned them. Twice. Then he put his hands on me." "You injured?" the deputy asked. "No, I was defending myself." The clerk nodded. He didn't start it. Didn't even raise his voice. The couple in the pickup truck finally stirred. The man got out, hesitant but clear. "We saw it too. He stayed calm the whole time. Those guys were pushing him, calling him stuff I wouldn't repeat. He warned them. Then they went too far." The deputy sighed, motioned toward the guy holding his ribs. "You need medical attention?" The man shook his head stubbornly, though his wince betrayed the truth. Elijah watched the whole thing with an emotional distance, like it wasn't happening to him. He'd been in moments like this before, where truth didn't always matter if the wrong person told it. But here, for once, the truth had witnesses. The deputy walked over to Elijah. "What's your name?" "Elijah McCall." The deputy paused, then tilted his head slightly. "You the same McCall who served with Anthony Vasquez out in Okinawa?" Elijah blinked. "Yeah, I was in his unit." "That's my cousin." The deputy cracked the first sign of a smile. "He told me stories about you, said you made him look lazy." Elijah gave the faintest grin. The deputy turned serious again. "You did good. You stayed in control. That ain't easy." Rick muttered something under his breath. The deputy shot him a glare. "I ought to take all of you in for public intoxication, harassment, maybe even assault. You got lucky you picked the wrong one." Rick started to protest, but his youngest friend touched his arm. "Rick, let's just go. The deputy waved them off. "Get on your bikes and leave. If I see you again today, I won't be this generous." The bikers didn't argue. They helped Rick toward his Harley. He swore under his breath, but even that didn't carry the venom it had before. They rode out of that gas station slower than they came in. But as the dust settled and the sirens faded, the people who watched it all had to reckon with what they didn't do when it mattered. The sheriff's SUV was still parked at an angle by the pumps as another deputy vehicle pulled in, this one driven by a woman in her late 30s. Uniform sharp, eyes sharper. She stepped out quickly, taking stock of the situation in 2 glances. The older deputy nodded at her. "We're good now. Got the story. Cameras'll back it." She looked at Elijah for a moment. "You McCall?" "Yeah." She walked over, measured. "You all right?" "I'm good." "I'm Deputy Lena Graves," she said, extending a hand. "I just saw your name come through dispatch. Recognized it." Elijah looked at her, confused. "From where?" "My brother, Luke Graves. He trained with you at Pendleton 3 years ago. You sparred with him during combatives. Said you were the first guy who ever tapped him out without breaking a sweat." Elijah's face relaxed. "Luke. Yeah, I remember him. He said if he ever ran into trouble and couldn't call the Corps, you'd be the next best thing." She gave a quiet chuckle, then grew serious again. "You handled this the right way," she added. "Kept your composure. Some guys come back from the service and don't know how to switch modes. You stayed sharp. I've had practice." Graves looked back toward the gas station entrance, where the clerk was still watching anxiously through the window. "She's got everything on tape," she said. "Once we collect the footage, we can make sure there's a record of what happened here, just in case." "Will I need to make a statement?" "Wouldn't hurt," she replied. "Come down to the station sometime this week, but from what I've seen, and what they've got on camera, you're not the one with a problem." Elijah nodded. "Appreciate that." The older deputy walked over, chewing a toothpick now. "I'll be honest, McCall. Most folks don't know what to do when 5 men try to corner them like that. You knew when to wait and when to move. Rare thing." "I didn't want to fight." "Yeah, but you knew how to end one. There's a difference." From the edge of the lot, the couple in the pickup finally climbed out, still a little sheepish. The man approached slowly, hands at his sides. I should have said something earlier," he began. "I just didn't know what was about to happen." Elijah didn't answer. He wasn't angry. He just looked at the man and waited. "You handled yourself," the man went on. "Better than I would have. Just wanted to say, I respect that." Elijah nodded once. That was enough. The clerk stepped outside now, arms crossed, trying to act more confident than she felt. "I'm sorry," she told Elijah. "I should have called sooner. I didn't want to escalate anything." "You didn't make it worse," Elijah said. "They did that themselves." Graves looked between them. "We'll file the paperwork. But honestly, this won't go much further. The guys who started it won't want to press charges. They know it'll bite them back, especially with footage. They'll disappear." The first deputy grinned. "Cowards usually do." Elijah gave a slow exhale. The weight in his shoulders didn't drop, but it shifted. He wasn't relieved. Not exactly. Just done. Ready to move forward. "I should get going," he said. "Take care of yourself," Graves replied. "And next time you're in Yuma, swing by the station. Luke's back in town next month. He'd be glad to see you." "I'll do that." Elijah got back into his car, closed the door, and started the engine. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the lot. The tension had drained, but something still lingered. Not anger, not fear. Just the reminder of how quickly a quiet afternoon could change. But as he pulled back onto the highway, the silence behind him said more than any apology ever could. The highway opened up in front of Elijah, flat and wide, the kind of road where the hum of tires becomes background noise fast. He rolled down the window halfway and let the dry wind push through the car. It didn't cool him down, not really, but it gave him something to focus on other than the replay looping in his head. He'd handled it right. He knew that. But something about the way those bikers had looked at him, like he didn't belong, like he was supposed to shrink, stuck deeper than the shove ever could. And still, the part that left the biggest mark. Not the shoving, Not the threats, not even the names. It was the people who said nothing, who watched, who waited to see how bad it would get before deciding if it was worth speaking up. He thought about the clerk, the couple in the truck, the young guy by the fridge with the earbuds. People who probably considered themselves decent. People who'd likely never call themselves complicit. He wasn't angry, but he wasn't blind either. After 15 minutes on the highway, he pulled into a rest stop. Just a shaded table under a concrete awning and a couple of vending machines humming against the wall. No one else around. Elijah cut the engine and stepped out. Walked over to the table and sat down, arms resting on his knees. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, checked for messages. One from his mom, asking if he'd be home for Labor Day. Another from a group chat with his unit, just memes and inside jokes. He replied to both. Then he put the phone away and just sat there, letting the quiet wrap around him. For a long time, he didn't move. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk circled. The sky was that hard desert blue that only shows up in the southwest. He watched it for a minute, then stood up. He wasn't the kind of guy who talked about this stuff much. Even in the core, he kept his stories close. But this one felt different. This one he might share, with his teammates, maybe his little cousin back in Phoenix, who always asked him what being a Marine was like. Because today wasn't about throwing punches, it was about control, and presence, and knowing who you are, even when other people try to reduce you to nothing. He got back in the car and kept driving. By the time he reached the university outskirts, the sun had dipped below the mountains. He pulled into the campus lot, engine ticking, and just sat for a moment. Inside the dorms, kids laughed. Someone blasted music. Life, completely unaware of what had just happened a few hours south. And that was the strangest part. How something so ugly, so heavy, could happen, and the world would just keep spinning like it never did. He didn't need the world to stop. He just needed people to notice. Back at that gas station, a handful of folks would probably tell the story different ways. The bikers would lie, of course, say they were ambushed, that he overreacted. But the clerk? The couple? Maybe they'd say something the next time they saw it happening to someone else. Maybe. Elijah stepped out, grabbed his duffel from the back seat, and started walking. He wasn't out to change the world, but he knew one thing for sure. When you stand your ground with grace, when you hold the line without losing your head, people remember it, even if they don't say a word. So the next time someone like Rick decides to test the wrong stranger, maybe, just maybe, someone watching will remember the day silence looked like permission and decide not to stay quiet again. There's strength in silence, but there's power in choosing when to speak. Standing up doesn't always mean throwing fists. Sometimes it means holding firm when nobody else will. If this story hit you in any way, share it. Tell someone. And the next time you see wrong being done, don't wait for someone like Elijah to clean it up. Speak. Step up. Be that voice.